Trump is aiming to defund NPR and PBS. Do New Hampshire outlets have a good case to continue the money?
The New England take.
Excited to be joined today for the first time on the show, surprisingly, Michael Graham, managing editor at NH Journal, nhjournal.com. Thanks so much for joining me today.
So is the surprising part that this is the first time, or is it surprised that I'm doing it at all? Because for me, it's the latter. I'm like, what was I thinking? Oh
what were you thinking?
Are you kidding me? What have I done? Oh my gosh!
I run a very shoddy right-wing outlet here, where I have every left-winger in the state.
When it comes to shoddy right-wing outlets, that's normally me, man. It's so weird to not be in that position. Yeah,
I know. I make you look so legitimate as a conservative news outlet. It's crazy.
There are a lot of things people have called me. Legitimate is not one of them. And that includes my father. But anyway, so what are we talking about? What's going on?
Yeah, so you had this...
How much am I getting paid to be here?
Can I get paid?
What's the federal and state tax budget for me to be here? That's what I love. First of all, let's just jump to the big picture here. In the era when I can literally listen to a local radio show from Kalamazoo, Michigan, while I'm in Qatar on my phone, you're telling me that I need to spend tax dollars so people can have radio and television. Are you kidding me? Did we run out of the horsewhip and buggy budget? Can we get? It's just insane. It makes absolutely no sense. We are awash in media. We are awash in content, and in this tidal wave of political news, weather, for whatever you want. The idea that I've got to have a taxpayer bucket full that we throw in is just insane. Taxpayers creating more media content is like sending hookers to Las Vegas. Trust me, they don't need them. And at least hookers in Las Vegas do something of value, which is what makes the letter that the New Hampshire Public Radio people, Jim Schachter and others, sent out, saying that if we don't give tax dollars to their one radio and TV station, that democracy is endangered. And said that if Donald Trump doesn't give your tax dollars to us, that it's an assault on independent journalism. I'm just like, I'm sorry. So what are the rest of us doing here? Tell me, you pick the radio network, you pick the television network, CBS, NBC, ABC, iHeart, whatever. I spent 15 years doing talk radio. I like, great job, love it. But if you told me that we can't shut down whatever, Cumulus Radio or NBC News. If we did that, democracy would die. What are you, an idiot? Or the publisher of the Washington Post, but that's a separate story. So
you posted a great interview with, you sent questions, I'm assuming Peter Frid of New Hampshire PBS and Jim Schachter of New Hampshire Public Radio sent the responses back into you via text.
Well, remember, they sent out a statement saying, we need your help getting people to keep funding us. Because if they don't, democracy will die in darkness or blah, blah, blah. And so I just published their questions and their answers. And I just want to start, if I can, with this. This is the first sentence that the public radio, public TV people say, quote, "Public media is the only free, universally accessible national resource that operates with a public service mission." Almost every word in that sentence, except for the with and the and, is a lie. Public media is not the only free media. Excuse me, how much do you charge for this show?
Precisely nothing. How much do you charge?
New Hampshire Journal, absolutely free. We urge you to subscribe for $4.99 a month, which is just a donation. You get the newsletter anyway. The content's on the web for free. How much does WMUR charge? How much does CBS charge? There's tons of free media. So then he says, free, universally accessible. Wrong. I can listen to your podcast. I can listen to local radio on my phone from anywhere in the world if I can get a cell connection, which, by the way, I can't do with public radio, public TV, because they're on the radio and TV band, to which you say, well, wait a minute, Michael, they're on streaming too, to which I say, then why am I paying for it? Everything is on streaming. Everybody. So what makes them special? I don't understand. Every point I bring up, they say, well, but, and I say, well, it's just like everything else.
It's a false premise. It's a false premise. How many times did they say false premise over the span of that?
It's not the only free. It's not the only universally accessible. It's not the only national media. I'm sorry, USA Today is national media. There's all kinds of national media, and even the media that are obviously CBS News, NBC News. I mean, all the national networks, News Nation, which I really love, Fox News, which gives me a headache sometimes. MSNBC, which is psychotic, and if you watch it regularly, you need to get mental help. There's all kinds. So everything in that, except they say, well, operates with a public service mission. And that's a lie. Not because everybody else does it, but because they don't. They don't have a public service mission. If they had a public service mission, they would have reported the Hunter Biden laptop story because it was news. But their current national CEO admits they didn't report it. Why? Because they don't have a public service mission. They would have reported on Joe Biden's age, the sitting president of the United States, mentally incapable. They never reported the story. They mocked people who reported the story. Why? Because they don't have a public service mission. So you say, Michael, if their mission isn't public service, is it profit? Well, kind of. They want to keep the nonprofit money flowing. And the fact is that their overwhelming weight of their donations come from upper middle class, upper aged suburban white ladies who really like watching Downton Abbey on television, and they send them their checks. So that's part of their programming model. The same way that, by the way, Fox News does center-right content because they want center-right viewers and dollars. MSNBC's model, but no, I agree. It's not for profit. It's for revenue because they want lots of money to spread their stuff. But their mission isn't public service. Their mission is partisan service, and everybody knows it. And when the leaders of NHPR said to my face, we're not partisan. There's no bias at all. I don't even know what to say to that. It's ludicrous. Everybody knows they're left-wingers, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with being left-wingers. Some of my best friends are left-wingers. But to look me in the eye and say, I'm a public partisan? Moi at NHPR? You go, come on.
I totally can't comprehend how in 2025, with all the fake news drama back and forth for the last decade and all that, they still cannot comprehend the fact that newsrooms inherently have a partisan bent, whether they really see it as good or evil or left or right or anything of that nature is irrelevant. What you decide to cover and how you decide to cover it is essential for how newsrooms operate one way or another. When you look at how they've been NHPR specifically has been covering the abortion debate over at the State House. It's always with a very positive look at the pro-choice Democrats as opposed to these evil Republicans that are trying to take away women's right to choose. When it comes to education, it's entirely around, say what you will about Conquer Monitor. I think I have some serious problems with a lot of their editorial bent when it comes to a lot of their stories. But at least when they were talking about EFAs, they were showing kind of the positive bit a little bit on how some students that needed unique opportunities outside of the public school system had that opportunity. I don't get that bent from a majority of the NHPR content.
Well, I'm going to set aside like the argument, well, no one can be objective, or it's impossible, or we all have our hidden biases, or whatever. That has nothing to do with this. This is NPR. They are ludicrously to the left. It's like arguing that you don't know the political leanings of the New York Times. Of course you know the political leanings of the New York Times. Now, that doesn't mean, by the way, that what the New York Times does isn't journalism or that it's not worth watching. What it means is that we all know what their bent is. And I have a story I want to share with you. So back during the 2022 race for U.S. Senate, when Maggie Hassan was running for re-election, early on, there was a thought that the seat might be competitive. The polls were showing it was competitive. There was a heated primary debate. Don Bolduc wanted to run for U.S. Senate. He'd run 2 years earlier, and he was locked in a campaign debate, to win the primary. And before the Republican primary was over, before anyone knew who the nominee was, New Hampshire Public Television and New Hampshire Public Radio announced they had a debate set. The moderators were going to be Amanda Gokey and Josh Rogers, and here was the date and blah, blah, blah. So I contacted him. I go, I'm sorry, how did you set a date? How did you pick the moderators? You don't have a nominee. How can you talk to both? And we talked to Senator Hassan. So because Senator Hassan wanted to do it and she approved of the moderators, then that was it. because NHPR and NPO and National New Hampshire Public Broadcasting were working with the Hassan campaign, and they admitted it. Oh yeah, we've already coordinated with them. We have this. How can you possibly even pretend that that's fair? You didn't even the Republicans don't even know they don't have anyone who they can say, look, I'm happy to do it, but how about having a less left of center moderate? How about having someone who couldn't negotiate anything, the time, nothing, because there was literally nobody to negotiate with. So that's how NHPR, that's how Schachter and the gang work. But here's the best part. So debate time rolls around, and I'm like, well, who are they going to have? And they're going to have Josh Rogers, who, by the way, I think does a fine job. I want to be very clear here. There are many fine people doing fine reporting in the public, world. They're fine. There's also a bunch of crazies, but whatever. And then the co-anchor was this person, Amanda Goki, who previously to working at NHPR or whatever, serving as moderator, was an editor at the progressive site Bitch Media, which you'll not be surprised to learn was a pretty far left page with a bunch of crazy environmental stuff or whatever. And she had been a writing fellow in global feminism for Bitch Media. And then she went to the New Hampshire Bulletin, which is funded by left-wing foundation money. And it's part of a national left-wing media program. So those are your moderators for a fair and even debate at NHPR. Someone from public radio and someone from Bitch Media. The hilarious part is Amanda Goki, who, by the way, who I know and I like her, and she's fine. She's a quality left of center journalist. Now works at the Boston Globe. So the hilarious
with an even more left wing guy than her.
That's the hilarious part. It's even more to the left of Bitch Media. So this is the world that the public media are in, and they look at us and they have a demand. I demand that you pretend that you don't know that I'm biased, and I demand that you pretend that even though there are 5 gazillion outlets for the news that you want, this is the one that cannot be set aside when it comes to public money. This is the one that needs public money. You can't give public money. If I said we're going to give public money to WMUR, people go, well, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Well, what's the difference between WMUR and public TV? If I said we're going to give tax dollars to that Jack Heath radio show, he does a radio show in New Hampshire, it's on a bunch of stations, very popular. You go, why are you giving him tax money? That's crazy. Well, why are you giving it to public radio? What's the difference? And they say the difference is we're the only people you can trust. Jim Schachter and the other gentleman, Find, did they say his name?
I don't know how you pronounce it. Frid, F-R-I-D.
Frid, I apologize. I don't know these. Said straight up in that interview, you read it at nhjournal.com, that we are the trusted window onto the world of news for New Hampshire. We really? Because I saw the poll numbers. Nobody trusts you. I take it back. Liberals trust you. Only 12% of Republicans think you're trustworthy, and they're half the voters in New Hampshire.
And they made the case that, well, people from both sides of the aisle listen to us. This is like, yeah, because a reasonable public should be paying attention to what's going on with left-wing outlets in addition to right-wing. It doesn't mean we necessarily think they don't have a bent one way or another. Like, I occasionally tune into NHPR, see what's going on and such. It doesn't mean I agree with what's going on, per se, with their coverage and how they're handling it. It's because I want to know what's going on over there with one of the few, like, there's only so many media outlets in New Hampshire. Like, we want to know what's going on over there, too.
Look, if you're a conservative, you are used to consuming liberal media because you have to, because that's overwhelmingly almost all the media. Now, obviously, that's changed some in the new era of social media, et cetera, and podcasts like yours. But, back in the day, you had liberal media and extra liberal media. That was pretty much it. So we're used to it. But there's a bigger point. It is not that I choose, and I rarely listen, but I used to say, look, I was a huge NPR fan. I mean, massive NPR, and it just got ridiculous. I'm like, this is crazy. These people, they're making crap up. They're leaving stuff out. But it doesn't matter if I listen or not. What matters is you have to pay for it. That's their message. We have to have your dollars taken against your will. And if I remember correctly, I think the budget was like 8% of the radio budget and 16% of the TV budget. Maybe getting those wrong numbers a little off. They're at our story at nhjournal.com. But I don't care what percentage it is. It should be 0, just like it is for everybody else, for WMUR and Concord Monitor and iHeartRadio and NH Journal and you and me. It's just there's nothing about them that if somebody said, if NPR didn't exist, if New Hampshire Public TV didn't exist, and someone said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to start us a radio TV network in 2025. We're going to spend millions of dollars hiring reporters to do liberal journalism because there's just not enough of it. They would laugh you out of the building. Of course you would not create it today, because you'd say, why are you doing this? Who needs it? And also, my other favorite thing is, well, what about people in rural areas? What's that got to do with anything? Rural areas have access to internet like everyone else. No thanks to Joe Biden, who appropriated $47 billion and didn't connect a single person to high-speed Wi-Fi like he promised. But when they say, yeah, but Michael, what about people who don't have Wi-Fi? What about people who don't have the internet? What, you think they have radio and television? Do you think everyone is guaranteed? There's no guarantee that someone's going to build a public radio antenna in your community. And so you're not solving any place that I can get a public radio signal. I can get some other radio signal, I guarantee. So they're not doing anything that other people aren't doing. They say we need it for public safety. Why? Well, how are we going to message people during an emergency? Oh, I don't know, by sending out a text like everyone else does in the modern developed world. Like the many commercial radio and TV stations, like AM radio.
They literally got rid of a ton of frequencies in order to enable the emergency broadcast system able to hit mobile devices now. That was part of the whole buying up a ton of the frequencies back when Benny made an ungodly amount of money about a decade ago or whatever it was, because he bought a bunch of frequencies because they needed the frequency bandwidth for 5G, which is how we get emergency broadcast and data. Something that really especially kills me when it comes to NHPR, not so much PBS. I don't know what the hell they're doing for the most part in PBS. But New Hampshire Public Radio.
I'll tell you exactly what they're doing. They're showing reruns of British programming that people who actually want to watch it already pay for with their BritBox subscription. That's what they're doing at
exactly.
PBS.
And New Hampshire Public Radio's built up this huge reputation over the last 5 years with their podcasts, with Bear Brook and all these programs that they put together. They're a leader when it comes to being in the digital space, and they're over here crying poverty in this broadcast space where when you tune into their broadcast, they barely ever have any of their reporters actually on the station itself. They'll occasionally have little segments where Anne-Marie or Josh Rogers or one of them may pop in and have a tiny little segment, but a majority of what is on their show is nationally syndicated programming that has nothing to do with New Hampshire.
And by the way, Anne-Marie Timmons, great reporter. And you know what? Everybody at NHPR says we can't possibly live without you, because how can we possibly survive without you and your unique vision of the world? Anne-Marie Timmons was a great reporter when she was at the New Hampshire Bulletin, and she was a great reporter when she was at the Concord Monitor. She's the same great reporter. If you went away, she would just be a great reporter at another outlet. There's nothing magical about you, so get your hand out of my pants. Pocket. Pocket. Where I keep my wallet.
That's a great close. We're going to close on that.
Thank you.
Michael Graham, NH Journal. This great. I'm going to link the articles down below. I'll have some screenshots over the span of the video, but this is so important. The media landscape has changed. We need to move on. We need to move on from these old broadcast outlets getting all our money. You guys can be making so much money from this very wealthy viewer base that they have that could definitely in some way capitalize on, just like New Hampshire Bulletin is doing with State's Newsroom and all that. The model exists. They can do it. Thanks so much for joining me, Michael.
Thank you.
NewEnglandTake.com. Be sure to like and subscribe if you're checking us out on YouTube. And thanks to the Granite Grok for sharing the show on Saturdays. We'll talk to you soon.